Hi, my name is Heath Jones, and I'm the pastor of Northwood Christian Church, and I'd like to say hello to our Facebook and our YouTube audiences, and also hello to our podcast audience as well, tuning in by way of the Northwood Podcast. If you don't know already, the Northwood Podcast is made available by way of Wish TV here in Indianapolis, the local television station, or one of them. And it's produced by way of the All Indiana Podcast Network, which operates through them and is featured on their website. And you should check them out at Wish TV's website, which you can find at www.wishtv.com/podcasts. And you can find the link in the description of this video below. Or if you'd like to learn more about our church, you should visit our website at www.indncc.org. That's www.indYNCC.org. And there you can learn from that website how to get involved and to become a part of the life-giving work that Northwood is doing. Or if you'd like to support the work we're doing monetarily, there are giving links on our website as well. And also, those links are provided in the description of the video below. If you are listening by way of the podcast, the Northwood Podcast, we'll take this time to pause for some advertisements. But if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, let's get straight to it. Welcome back. Today, we'll be going over a Bible passage found in the 20th chapter of the Gospel of Luke, verses 27 through 40. And it goes, "Some Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came to him and asked him a question. 'Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers. The first married and died childless. Then the second. And the third married her. And so, in the same way, all 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had married her.' Jesus said to them, 'Those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage. But those who are considered worthy of a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they cannot die anymore, because they are like angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection.' And the fact that the dead are raised, Moses himself showed in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now, he is God not of the dead, but of the living, for to him all of them are alive." Then some of the scribes answered, "Teacher, you have spoken well." For they no longer dared to ask him another question. I can remember the way this idea felt to me the first time I had really given it any thought. This idea that in the resurrection, or whatever's next after we die, there will be no marriage. And I never gave it much thought until I had fallen in love myself. And I remember talking about it with my wife, Kelly, but back when we were teenagers before, she was 15, I was 17. We were madly in love and smitten with that puppy dog love, intermixed with that deeper love that would carry us to where we are today. It was beginning, but we were infatuated teenagers, and this idea that represented in this text that you will not be married when you die. I don't remember how it came up, but perhaps it had been preached on in one of our churches, but I remember wondering at what it meant and feeling absolutely appalled and terrified that when we died, madly in love as we were, that the deep bond that we hope to share in our future marriage may not carry on into the world that is to come. So what would we do? Just sheepishly wave to one another in heaven and pretend not to know one another, given all the life that we had shared, even up to that point? Would we forget the romance and the intimate feelings that we had known on earth? And this all seemed very sad to us at the time. And it's even now thinking about it is a little depressing. It's hard to think outside of the categories that we've inherited categories of love and of marriage and categories that describe our ways of relating that we have been given in our modern context. And of course, my wife and I have the luxury of thinking about it from our modern vantage point. Things are much more improved for especially Kelly being a woman than they were in Jesus' day. She might have felt different if she had been given to me in marriage to suit our parents' desires, as used to be common, an arranged marriage. Perhaps their desire, our parents, would have been for offspring or to make sure that the wealth stayed in the family, and perhaps they would want more land and greater inheritance acquired through this marriage. For you see, women in those days were basically bargaining chips used to broker profitable mergers between families, and daughters were viewed by their father-in-laws as bearers of their sons' children so that the family lineage and the name might go on and on and on, and then the property can stay in-house. And if that wife were barren, then she would be considered by many to be a liability at the very least, because she can't make kids, and some would even consider her cursed. All this to say, a woman in those days would certainly have heard this question posited by the Sadducees about marriage in the next world in a different light. And, if we just take the woman in the parable, in the story, or the hypothetical that Jesus is being presented with, you just got to say, poor woman, passed around from brother to brother. This was the cultural practice. And in this story, the Sadducees are referencing a Levitical law that gave instructions as to what should be done when a woman's husband dies before she has been able to bear children, which was her main purpose. After all, the family's name has to be passed on somehow. So how if the husband dies before he has made a baby with her? Because her value is bound in her ability to produce offspring. So their answer is she gets passed on to the next brother, with the idea that the brother will sire children in the name of his deceased brother, so that the family name will continue. And she has no choice in the matter, it seems. She's simply handed on to the next brother. And my wife Kelly and my brother and I used to joke about this ancient law that the Sadducees are referencing in the story. You can find it in the Torah, in the Pentateuch. And we imagined how it would be if things were the same today, or if we took that teaching seriously today. And the idea was laughable from our vantage point, as my wife and brother are certainly no fit match in that way. But it's just funny to think about. But the idea becomes far less laughable if you consider what it might have actually been like to have been passed around in such a way. You can imagine a woman listening in on this conversation between Jesus and this Sadducee, this religious leader, wondering if there is indeed any justice in this life or in some other life to come. Because this question of justice is the whole point of this conversation. It's not really about marriage or what marriage means in the next life. The main point gets lost in these details about marriage and wondering what it will be like. This isn't at rock bottom a question about marriage. The question is, as I said, about justice. And modern readers, you and I often will miss this point. This interaction is about whether or not the ways humans organize and behave in history will be repeated in whatever comes next when we die. In this woman's instance, will the laws and the rules about marriage and her place in society be repeated? Will she always be passed around? And the woman listening in on the conversation wants to know if the injustices perpetrated by her culture, her traditions, and the institutions around her would continue on. When she dies, she would be wondering, will she be an eternal widow? Someone who is destitute and ostracized, as widows were in her day, and for all eternity. Or will she be beholden to 7 different husbands after she dies, if her circumstance matches the one described by this Sadducee asking Jesus the question? Will the injustices foisted upon her be rectified? When she dies, will she be free from the abuse or be beholden to it forever? This is really the heart of the question, which is directly related to a broader question for all of us. Her question is related to our questions, which: will there one day be justice? Or if not anytime soon, how about in the life to come? Can we expect our situation to improve, or should we expect more of the same? And before we move on, we do well to consider the group that is questioning Jesus in the first place. You should know something about these Sadducees, as the text just drops the name. And what we know about these people is that they don't believe in a life after death. So the person asking the question doesn't even believe there is a resurrection or a life after death, just nothing. And they arrive at this conclusion by way of their staunch commitment to the Pentateuch as the only authoritative writing, which you may recall is the first 5 books of our Old Testament, as we call it today. And they were very theologically conservative in that respect. They don't budge from that the Pentateuch, and they don't believe in the oral traditions that came after or the prophetic writings that would come in the centuries that followed the writings of the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. And it was their contention that the books of Moses, as the Pentateuch, the Torah, as we've been using these terms interchangeably, since they said nothing about the afterlife, at least for most people, they didn't believe in one for themselves either. So fine, that's their belief. But there is something else that you have to know about the Sadducees. Remember, the land of Israel is under Roman occupation. I've brought that up in many other sermons before. This is an occupied space. And given that context and of the situation, biblical scholar Clark Williamson wrote, quoting, "The Sadducees were a wealthy group within Judaism who were friendly with the Romans, who benefited economically from this relationship." So what you have to know about the people asking Jesus this question about marriage and the next life is that they're getting on pretty well in this world. So why hope for a better one? Life was treating them so good. What purpose could a resurrected life serve? They have enough in the current one. More of the same? Yes, please, I guess, but we have enough. And it's been noticed by sociologists that it's often the repressed in the underclass who pine for another world. Clark Williamson contextualizes this impulse in relation to our story today in writing, again quoting him, "Belief in the resurrection was strongest among people who were oppressed or repressed. The Sadducees, who lived in luxury and little reason to hope for a better world, would of course not have longed for one." And trust me, most of the people in Israel had good reason to hope for a better world. If you weren't someone like the Sadducees who were probably better off, you had reason to wish that this was not all there was, or that there wouldn't be more of the same if there was something when we die. It started centuries before as the people of Israel were met with heartbreak after heartbreak, invasion after invasion, injustice after injustice. Sounds like the telling of human history, really. Cities being razed to the ground, famines putting down the innocent, young, and the old alike. And the reasoning goes, if there is a God, and if God is just, fair, and has our best interest at heart, then there has to be a reckoning. If not now, someday, maybe when we die. But the Sadducees think there's no afterlife. There were other opinions. The Pharisees, for instance, often framed as antagonists to Jesus in the Gospels. But on this matter, Jesus and the Pharisees agree against the teachings of the Sadducees. They believe in a resurrection. Minister and biblical scholar Bill Loader explains it this way, quoting him. "The Pharisees embraced the idea of resurrection from the dead. It was a way of putting flesh on hope, so to speak, in days when justice in this world seemed irretrievable. The righteous would surely be rewarded. They will surely be raised from the dead. Otherwise, life does not make sense." Others included the obverse side of the coin. Those who perpetrate injustice must be brought to account. This is clearly not going to happen in this life. Then they will have to be raised from the dead and brought to trial. Resurrection from the dead and judgment are commonly linked. Such ideas may have developed under the influence of Persian thought. They were also a way of trying to make sense of the hope which Israel wanted to espouse, based on the fact that God is a liberator. Jesus and his movement belong in the circles which espoused such notions. End quote. Just reading that to explain how there was this idea in opposition to the idea of the Sadducees that there was a resurrection. Jesus shared this belief along with the Pharisees, and because there needs to be justice, if not here, where? Maybe in the life to come. In the end, it's all about justice. Justice for the poor and marginalized. Justice for the rich and the powerful. So the first thing Jesus does when he's asked this question about marriage in the afterlife is he quickly swipes it away because it's a trap, and he knows it. It misses the point entirely. The Sadducees try and envision an afterlife, which they do not believe in, as some continuation of the current order of things. It's like they can't envision a world where the institutions and customs in this life that serve to perpetuate injustice come to an end, and then are overcome and transformed by the wisdom, love, and righteousness of God. And why should they envision a world where the institutions and customs that perpetuate injustice are overturned? Because they have benefited so well by them. But imagine if you were a woman in Jesus' day, listening in on this conversation. Perhaps your husband was dying, and you're wondering if you're going to be passed on to your husband's brother as if you were merely a receptacle for that family's babies and nothing more. Imagine listening in on this conversation, wondering intensely about what Jesus' answer to the Sadducees might be, only to have Jesus blow the whole thing up and saying, there will be no marriage as you know it now. My paraphrase, basically, he's saying the customs you keep and the current order of things will be turned on their heads. In the life that is to come, the widow will simply be known as child of God. That's it. Not widow, not wife, not even sister, daughter, child of God. That relationship will define all of the others. Or you could enter the story from the vantage point of a modern reader. Imagine a factory worker wondering who he will work for in heaven. And you can see the logic. The CEO retires and is replaced by another cut from the same cloth. But let's say they all die. All of the CEOs, all of the bosses die. And then they're replaced. And when you die, if things are the same in the next world, who is going to be your boss? Who's your overlord? And the answer is you will have no God but God. And you will be like the angels, a child of the living God. God of the living. It's an important point. For when justice comes in full, we will truly be alive. So, riffing off of the question, what will the next life be like in specific? And this passage, Jesus' answer, it doesn't address that. Although in a weird way, it kind of does. It's almost to say, we don't know, but it's beyond what you can know. The answer basically is when the complete comes, when all is made well and God brings justice into creation, it will be beyond our current mind's conception. We do not have the categories or words to describe it. Words like marriage and law and father, mother, brother, sister, friend, lover, male, female, all of them inadequate to describe the nature of our relationships in that space. From where we now stand, we do far better to admit that our current categories that are so familiar and comfortable, and that we fight over even, that we use to order our lives in modern society. We must acknowledge that ours, as were the ones back in Jesus' day, are imperfect and flawed, and we shouldn't grow too attached to them. They will each be overturned and transformed into something far better. But for now, we will continue to hope for a time when we are resurrected into new life, when justice is accomplished, when all that is redeemable is redeemed and restored to life, a time and place where the God of the living calls life from every dead place. That is the hope. That is the dream. That is what I preach at funerals. Our faith is in that vision for our future. But in the meantime, as I often say, in the meantime, we cannot simply sit around. For you see, over the centuries, God has challenged us to see beyond our flawed perception in the here and now, to try to glimpse beyond these categories in the here and now. For example, fewer and fewer women today are viewed as property. This is a movement forward or towards the realm of God that Jesus brought with them. This, need I say it, is a good thing. And also, fewer and fewer societies view slavery as a justifiable practice. There was a time when the institution of slavery, the institutions of slavery, were assumed as normal by many societies, and today this is becoming increasingly rare. These are but a few examples of ways in which humans have rethought the old orders of things and have moved closer to God's vision for humanity. And when we see all peoples as brothers and sisters, that's the goal, God's vision. When we see all peoples as brothers and sisters, or perhaps more, but who knows? But there is still work to do. We still live in a time when racial inequities are baked into our economy and our governing institutions. As sure as Jesus envisioned a time when the widow need not be used by the men in her husband's family, we, the body of Christ, must envision a time when racial inequity is a thing of the past, when homophobia is a thing of the past, when sexism is finally a thing of the past, and the list of unjust societal practices is long in every age, and I'm sure you have your own. There are numerous other issues. The calls for justice are too many to count and overwhelming. But the good news of today's teaching is this. In the end of things, or should I say, at the beginning of creation's new chapter, God will bring justice and wholeness to all creation. This is our hope that we hold, that we cling to. As Jesus reminds us, this is a hope that is buried deep in our ancient stories. As surely as our God is the God of the living, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who lived thousands of years ago, our God today, same God, will see us through to newer and newer life. This is a reckless hope that lays fairly near the heart of our faith, that God will lead us into a just reality. In the meantime, we strive to create a more just world. Or as we pray every week in church, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And because our God is the God of the living, we have hope for life in the future. Our faith calls us to hope that God will lead us to a just world. If you are like a widow waiting for justice for you and others like you, hold on to this hope. Our God is leading us into life. May God hasten the day. And for now, we strive towards that day, for a more just world with every fiber of our beings. May the realm of God find us and transform us. May it be so. May it be so. May it be so. This has been the Northwood Podcast. If you like what we are doing here, please subscribe to the podcast by way of whatever app you use to listen, or leave a comment. These points of engagement drive more traffic our way, or so I've been told. Or you might check out our website, www.indyncc.org. That's indncc.org. And also check out the other podcasts produced by the All Indiana Podcast Network. Until next time, peace.